Today's story is the man who marked his boat to find his sword. A long, long time ago in ancient China, there lived a man named Odong. He was not very clever, but he was very proud of himself. Like to say things like, "I am the smartest man in the whole kingdom," even though he once tried to fry rice with water and forgot to turn on the fire. It's just terrible. One sunny morning, Odong decided to travel across the river to visit his cousin in the next village. He packed some snacks, roasted peanuts, dried tofu, and a big jug of tea. Most importantly, he brought his favorite sword. This sword was shiny, sharp, and super cool looking. He played with it a lot at home when he was alone. He held it in the air and felt empowered like the Lich King commanding the Northrend. The sword was honestly his treasure. "Don't lose your sword," warned by his neighbor Ganny Liang. "You lose everything." "Oh yay," said Odong. "I tied it to my waist. How could I lose it?" Famous last words before losing something in life. Odong rented a small boat from old ferrymen. It was a bit shaky, but it floated. The boat rocked gently as Odong stepped in. "Safe and sound," said, sitting down, patting his sword. Halfway across the river, Odong leaned over to take a sip from his jug of tea. At that very moment, splash, the boat wobbled, his waist twisted, and up. The sword fell into the river. "No," cried Odong, "my sword." And he jumped up, nearly tipping the boat over. "I have to get it back." But the river was fast and deep. The water was murky. He couldn't see anything below. And Odong, he couldn't swim. Suddenly, a brilliant idea popped into Odong's mind. And this action was the highlight of his life. Let's find out what this brilliant person did to retrieve the sword. "I know what to do," he shouted. "I'll mark the boat," pulled out his knife and carved a big X on the side of the boat right where the sword fell in. "There," he said proudly. "When I get to shore, I'll dive in right under this mark, and I'll find my sword." The ferryman blinked. "Oh, what are you doing?" "I marked the spot where my sword fell," said Odong, puffing out his chest. Old ferryman scratched his head. "But the boat moves, and the water flows. The sword stays behind. Your mark won't help." Odong laughed. "You old folks don't understand new techniques." Ferryman shook his head and said, "Suit yourself." When they reached the other side, Odong jumped off the boat and ran to the riverbank. He looked at the mark on the boat, then looked at the water. He said, "It should be right here." He jumped into the river with a big splash. Bubbles came up. Then more bubbles. And then cough, cough, cough. He popped back up, soaked and confused. No sword. He tried again. Cough, cough, still no sword. He tried 5 more times. People on the riverbank gathered to watch. Some were holding snacks. Ganny Liang showed up and shook her head. "You marked the boat," she said, but the boat kept moving. "Your sword fell back there in the middle of the river." Odong stared at the water. News of the boat marker spread quickly. People laughed. "Did you hear about the man who marked the boat to find his sword?" "Yeah, next time I drop my dumpling, I'll mark the table." Even little kids started singing. "If your kite flies to the sky, just draw a line and don't ask why. If you trip and lose your bun, mark your shoe and say you've won." Poor Odong. He became famous, but not in the way he hoped. He tried to explain, but it made sense in my head. That just made people laugh even harder. Eventually, Odong gave up searching for his sword. He walked back home, dripping wet, grumbling. "I need a smarter idea next time." Ganny Liang handed him a towel. "Or you could just listen next time." The moral of the story of Odong teaches a very important lesson. Just like how the boat keeps moving and the sword stays behind, we must change our methods when things around us change. Holding on to old ideas when the situation is new, that's not wise. This is the meaning behind today's wisdom story, which literally means to carve a mark on the boat to look for the sword. It's used when someone does something foolish, because they refuse to adapt to changes. Years later, Odong finally learned his lesson. He became a teacher in his village, telling stories to kids. Once, there was a silly man, he would say, who lost his sword in a river. The children would giggle and asked, "Let me guess." He marked the boat. Odong nodded. "Do you think he found his sword?" "Nu," they all shouted. Then Odong would smile. But he found something better, a lesson that lasted a lifetime. And from that day on, nobody in the village ever marked a boat to find a lost sword again. Well, except for one little thief who covered his own ears when stealing his neighbor's doorbell. That's a story for another time. The end.